بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Because I know there was only one day from yesterday in terms of revising, we'll just do a quick revision today inshallah. We won't take too long, and I'll just test you on yesterday's lesson. But next week inshallah, next Tuesday, which is our next lesson, I expect everyone to revise all 4 lessons that we have taken inshallah. So Ibrahim, tell me some of the proofs showing that it is obligatory to love the Prophet ﷺ.
The hadith of Umar ibn al-Khattab when he said to the Prophet ﷺ, that Prophet ﷺ said to Umar Umar said to the Prophet ﷺ that O Messenger of Allah, that I'm more dearer to you than my own self. And then Prophet ﷺ said, no, that I have to be more dearer than to you for complete iman. And then Umar repeated what the Prophet ﷺ said, and the Prophet ﷺ replied that your iman now is complete.
Okay, now, so Umar said to the Prophet ﷺ that I love you more than everybody else apart from myself, and the Prophet ﷺ said you don't have full iman. So Umar, he said no, I love you more than everybody else including myself, and the Prophet ﷺ said Al-ana ya Umar, now Umar, now you have complete iman. Give me one more proof. Ibrahim.
The Prophet ﷺ, he said that he has to be more dearer to you than your own parents and your own children.
Now, the Prophet said, none of you truly believe until I become more beloved to you than your children, parents, and the rest of mankind. Muhammad Khan, what is the ruling of having an ounce of love for the Prophet ﷺ, and what's the ruling of loving the Prophet ﷺ more than everybody else?
So having an ounce of love for the Prophet ﷺ is from Aslul Iman. For you to be considered a Muslim, you must have at least some sort of love in your heart for the Prophet ﷺ. As for loving the Prophet ﷺ more than everyone and everything else, then that's from Al-Iman Wajib, the Wajib Iman.
Obligatory Iman, no.
Yeah.
Ahsant. Okay. Yasir, what are the different types of people when it comes to loving the Prophet ﷺ?
You have the negligent people who do not acknowledge him, don't uphold his rights, and don't really follow him. And then you have the middle group who acknowledge him, love him, and cling on to this sunnah. And then you have the extreme who claim to love him, but it causes them to innovate in the religion.
Ahsant. Abdullah, tell me, what are some of the signs of loving the Prophet ﷺ?
Assalamu alaikum, Ustad. One of the signs is constantly giving salawat and salam upon him.
No.
And I'm not sure of the other signs.
Okay, khair. I ended up changing it, by the way. I ended up making it 4. I made the first and second, I just did it into one, and I thought let's write it out. So first is cling on to the Sunnah of the Prophet by learning it, acting upon it, i.e. following it and obeying it, spreading it and defending it, and so on. We have saying salutations upon the Prophet. We have loving what the Prophet loves and hating what he hates, and we have wanting to see the Prophet and meet the Prophet. Ibrahim mentioned to me a couple of examples of how the companions loved the Prophet.
One of them is when Prophet ﷺ took off his ring and threw it across some sand, and all the companions behind him done the same. And the changing of the Qibla was originally at Jerusalem, but the Prophet ﷺ wanted to face the Kaaba, so the companions followed him. And Ibn Mas'ud was walking behind the Prophet ﷺ, and Prophet ﷺ said, sit down. He sat down outside and someone else told him that the Prophet ﷺ wasn't speaking to him. But he goes, all I heard was the Prophet ﷺ to sit down, so he sat down.
Okay, Hassan. Yasir, tell me some of the points that show the nobility of the science of Hadith. Mention to me at least 5. Yasir. No. Okay, Abdullah.
Even from a few words, we can learn a lot from it. So we can get multiple rulings and meanings from a few words.
And the Prophet ﷺ was his best speech of from the creation. He was given Jami' al-Kalim, comprehensive speech. No.
Okay.
Because comprehensive speech is where you speak a little and the meaning is a lot. No, words.
I'm not sure of any others.
There are 10 points. All right, Muhammad Khan.
So some of them are that it allows us to hold on to the Sunnah and follow its guidance by learning what's in the Sunnah. Also, it allows us to learn the sifat, the characteristics and manners of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how he carried himself, and in the Hadith there are many akhbar, many narrations about Tawheed and Jannah and Nar, and their descriptions we can learn from the Hadith.
Okay, khair. I'm going to be lenient on this one. Next lesson, just try to go all the time. Right, Ibrahim mentioned to me some hadith regarding the status of the muhaddithin.
One of them is that Islam will begin as something strange and will return as something strange. That's the only one I could remember.
Any other hadith? Any other hadith?
That's the only one I could remember.
Hamza, give me another hadith. I'll show you that now.
What was the question, Ustad?
Give me a hadith showing the status of the muhaddithin.
Show the statements of the Muhaddithin. Hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentions about the person who, anyone who, he hears a hadith from me, نظر الله من سمع منا شيئا ثم بلغه فبلغه كما سمع نعم فربما مبلغ أو من سمع من سمع يعني may Allah glorify or brighten the face of the person who heard, who saw the hadith or heard the hadith from me, and then he balagha, he gave it out, he spreaded it just how he heard it, and I forgot the translation.
Okay. Muhammad Khan, give me another hadith.
The hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, "Bada al-Islamu ghariban wa sa'udu kama bada'a ghariban fatuba lil-ghuraba." Basically, which means that Islam started as something which is strange, and it will return to be something strange. So, may all goodness be for the strangers.
Okay, fair. Now, I've added some references for you guys. I also added the 6 hadith. And Hamza, I looked, it was so Hamza, when you heard me say in the other place, I mentioned Al-Hakim. The reason I mentioned Hakim is because that's what I read. But I read it in an English place. When I looked up, I couldn't find the statement of Hakim, but I found it was Ibn Hibban said it. So either it's a statement of Hakim, which I can't find because it's in English and I just can't find it in Arabic, or maybe that person who wrote it in English was mistaken. But I found one in Arabic where those are the most right of me on the day of resurrection are those who send the most citation upon me. Ibn Hibban, he narrates this hadith in his Sahih, which we'll talk about inshallah. He says, in this narration is a proof that those who have the most right of the Prophet ﷺ on the day of resurrection, i.e. will be the closest. Some narrations say closest. This one has the wording, has the most right. They are the companions of Hadith, i.e. the people of Hadith, because there is not a group in this ummah who send more citations upon the Prophet ﷺ than them. And here are some statements of the ulama. Right, now we come on to our next part of the introduction. You can put your hands down now, inshallah. This is where we are going through the different types of hadith. And many a time you'll hear that this hadith is this, and this hadith is X, and Y, and Z, and so on. But what do all of these terminologies mean? Hadith, the different types of hadith, there are different types depending on the angle in which we look at hadith and the angle in which we split hadith. If we look at the hadith from the type of, or from the angle and the perspective of the authenticity of the hadith, which is probably the most famous one that you all know, and maybe the most important as well, then it is split generally into 3 parts. In a bit more detail, it's split into 5, which we will get to shortly, inshallah. But in simple terms, in an easy general way, generally it is split into 3 parts. A hadith, in terms of its authenticity, is generally split into 3 types. The first type is known as Sahih, the second is known as Hassan, and the third is known as Da'if. A Sahih hadith translates to authentic. Sahih is authentic. Hassan means a good hadith. It's a good hadith. That's in terms of the authenticity. We'll explain what that means. And Da'if is translated to as weak. Da'if is translated to weak. Now, what is, and you've probably heard this before, that this is a Sahih hadith, this is a Hassan hadith, this is a Da'if, weak hadith. But what constitutes a weak hadith? What makes a hadith Hassan? What is a Sahih hadith, an authentic hadith? What do these terminologies actually mean, and what do they consist of? This is what we will, inshallah, we're going through today. So, we zoom out a little bit. All right. Okay, that's all we need. Now, so we're going to talk about an authentic hadith first. Let's go back down. 1 second. Let me close it and open it again. Now, so we are talking about hadith in terms of the authenticity. And there are three: Sahih, Hassan, and Da'if. Authentic, good, and weak. Now, what is a authentic hadith? What makes a hadith authentic? A hadith which is authentic is a hadith which consists of 5 conditions. i.e., 5 conditions of this hadith are fulfilled. If these 5 conditions are fulfilled, then the hadith is considered an authentic hadith. If any of these 5 conditions are not fulfilled, then it is not considered an authentic hadith, and we will speak about that shortly. What is it then? We'll talk about it in a second. So, as you can see, there are 5 numbers over here, right? These are pertaining to the 5 conditions. Alhamdulillah, we've written them out, so it's easy for you. I just need you guys to understand, and maybe you can annotate as well. The first 3 conditions, ulama have different ways of splitting the conditions. Some split it into conditions pertaining to the sanad and conditions pertaining to the matan. However, I think an easier way is to split it that the first three conditions are 3 conditions that you have to have. These are 3 conditions that you have to have. These 3, you have to have them. Have to have doesn't sound that good, right? Must have. No. These are 3 that you must have. And then the remaining 2 are conditions that you can't have, that you cannot have. Okay? So 3 things that you have to have in a Sahih hadith, and 2 things that you can't have. The first is ittisal al-sanad. The first is that the chain is complete. Now we know what a sanad is. We've talked about a sanad previously. And a sanad would be, for example, you have the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then we have a sahabi, then we have a tabi'i, then we have a tabi'i, and then, for example, we have the muhaddith who narrates the hadith, for example. So in this chain of narration, if the muhaddith says, I heard from the tabi'i, who heard from the tabi'i, who said that the Prophet ﷺ said, here he's not mentioned a companion. So the chain is incomplete. There's somebody missing in the chain. Likewise, if the muhaddith was to say, I heard, or even if he doesn't say I heard, he says, the tabi'i said, that the sahabi said, that the Prophet ﷺ said, again, he's missed somebody out. So it is that this condition is not fulfilled. So what we mean by complete chain is that every single person, every single level is mentioned. So the chain is complete from like that. Anybody missing in the chain, then it is not considered an authentic hadith, because this first condition has not been fulfilled. And the ulama have different names. They have different names. A hadith where the teacher of the muhaddith, if he's not mentioned, what's it called? They give it a name. If somebody from the middle is missing, they give it another name. If the tabi'i says that the Prophet says, and they don't mention the sahabi, they give it another name. All these names right now, you don't need to worry about any of those names. All you need to know is that this condition is not fulfilled. Have the names mursal, mu'adal, munqati', and so many others. So you don't need to worry about that. The second condition is al-adala. First one, ittisal al-sanad. The second is al-adala. Al-adala means that the narrators are trustworthy. The narrators are trustworthy. So this includes 2 things. For a person to be considered trustworthy, this includes 2 things. The first is that the person has taqwa. What does it mean that a person has taqwa? Taqwa is referring to a person who does not fall into major sins, nor is he consistent upon the minor sins. He does not fall into the major sins, nor is he consistent upon the minor sins. And the ulama say that if a person, he continues doing a minor sin, that becomes a major sin, because there's no fear of Allah left in that minor sin. So that is the first, that's regarding taqwa. And then the second is al-muru'ah. Al-muru'ah, the ulama define it as a person, a muru'ah is a person doing those actions that beautifies him, and he stays away from those actions which tarnishes him. He does those actions which beautify him, and he avoids the actions which tarnish him. What does that mean? It means that a person, it's very important for a student of knowledge, they should also, try to uphold, both of these characteristics to be considered trustworthy. But muru'ah, basically, and I mentioned this in Ta'adhim al-Ilm as well, and I mentioned the same examples. A person, he stays away from doing those actions, even if they are halal, but it's something which is looked down upon, And I always give the example because I think it's a very clear example. Imagine Sheikh Abdul Muhsin al-Qasim, the Imam of Masjid Nabawi, for example, Hafidhullah. He comes to lead Salah in Masjid Nabawi, but he's wearing jeans, for example. He's wearing jeans. Now let's say the jeans they're not tight jeans, there's no pictures, it's all halal. But is that befitting of the Imam? If the Imam of Masjid Nabawi came out wearing that, everyone would go crazy, right? No, in English it says social decorum, but we don't need to know the English for every single word. So stick to muru'ah, because muru'ah is more of a broader concept. And muru'ah differs from time and place. Muru'ah differs from time and place. Maybe something in England is considered for muru'ah, but in Saudi or in the Arab countries or the Muslim countries, it's not considered for muru'ah, and vice versa. Likewise, maybe the time differs as well. Maybe something which was considered for muru'ah in this century, it's not considered for muru'ah 100 years ago. So muru'ah differs, and it even differs on the person looking. And some ulama, if they saw somebody standing up and eating, they would not take hadith from him. They say this person does not have muru'ah. How can he stand up and eat? Things like that. So for a person to be trustworthy, he has to have taqwa and muru'ah. And if you want to write in English, class, you can write in English if you want. Social decorum. I.e., socially, he upholds himself in a manner where he only does those actions which beautify him and honors him and raises his status, and he stays away from those actions which lower his status and makes the people look down upon him. The third is that a person has tam al-dabt. Tam is complete al-dabt, precision, i.e. perfect memory. He has perfect memory. And what I mean by perfect memory isn't that he never ever makes a mistake, but his mistakes are very rare. So what do you guys think? If a person makes 5 mistakes in hadith, is that a lot of mistakes or is that a little bit of mistakes? What do you guys think? Five is a lot? 5 is a little? Right, if the person has narrated 5,000 hadith like Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh, and he made 5 mistakes, even though Abu Hurairah didn't make a mistake. If he's narrated 5,000 hadith and he makes 5 mistakes, is that a little or a lot? No, that's not a lot. That's little. 5,000 hadith. That's what? Is that even 1%? Huh? Or is that 0.1? That's right. Anyways, okay. But now if I say to you a person narrates, and it may differ, is 5 a lot, 3. But let's say if a person narrates only 10 hadith and he makes 5 mistakes. He's only narrated 10 hadith and he's made 5 mistakes. No, without that, that's a lot. That's half of the hadith that he's narrated. He's made mistakes in. So what I mean by complete precision or perfect memory, it's not that he never ever makes a mistake, because everybody makes mistakes. But then his mistakes are very, very little, very, very rare. I've just given you an example, 5 out of 5,000, just as an example. There's no actual number on it. This differs from obviously scholar to scholar, or he may consider a lot, or how strict or how lenient he may be, but you understand the point. And this type of precision and its memory that this person has is of two types. We have ضبط صدر and ضبط كتاب. ضبط صدر, which is this first one, is the memory of the heart, or the precision of the heart, i.e. memory. When you say precision, we mean he's precise in his memorization and narrating. ضبط صدر is a precision of the chest, literally the chest, i.e. the heart. It's basically is what you understand to be narrating from memory. Right? He narrates from memory without looking into anything. But the opposite of ضبط kitab, the precision of a book. The precision of a book means is that this person narrates but from his book. So that he writes in his book, he revises from that book, and if he narrates a hadith, he looks into that book. That's also permissible. It's not sin or anything wrong for a person to narrate from looking into a book. That's completely permissible. However, if a person does narrate from the book, then obviously a lot more things have to be taken into consideration. Meaning, if he has to make sure that he looks after that book and he revises from that book, and when he narrates from that book. Yani, if he has a book all the time, but then there's some hadith where he narrates not looking from that book, then we have to look into those hadith. Maybe he's made a mistake because he's not looking from that book. He's dependent upon the book. So we have to look into it. Maybe, and this sometimes happens, where ulama rahimahumullah, this can happen to both. I'll give you an example of both of these types, where maybe later, maybe during the, maybe, okay, for example of the first type, from memory or precision of the chest, is a person when he's younger in age, his memory is precise. But once he reaches old age, he starts making mistakes, right? So, I know I mentioned this, that just because he narrated a hadith doesn't mean we accept it, nor does it mean that we reject it. We look, did he narrate it before or after he became old? Likewise with kitab, let's say he had a fire in his house which burned all of his books. We look, did he narrate the hadith before the books got burnt or after the books got burnt? Sometimes books get lost or anything whilst they are traveling. So the ulama would say, yeah, when he was in this country, he was strong. So whatever he narrates in this country, accept it. But when he goes to this country, whatever happened, but he's weak over there. So they look into everything. They're very, very precise in muhaddithun. The fourth condition is adam al-shudhuth, that there can't be contradiction. And what do we mean by contradictions? Here we mean where a trustworthy narrator, he contradicts and goes against somebody who is more trustworthy than him. A trustworthy narrator contradicts and goes against somebody who is more trustworthy than him. So for example, I'll give you an example right now. Sheikh Salih Fawzan narrates a hadith and I narrate a hadith. If not a hadith, let's say an incident that took place, and I narrate it. He says this happened, and I say something completely opposite. I say no, something else happened, right? My narration will not be accepted because I'm going against somebody who's more trustworthy, somebody who's more precise, somebody who's a stronger narrator. So mine would not be accepted. But note in here we said it is when a trustworthy narrator goes against somebody who is more trustworthy than him. Yani I'm still trustworthy, alhamdulillah. There's another scenario where it is when a weak narrator goes against somebody who's more trustworthy than him. Notice the difference. This one here, this condition that we are talking about, is that shudhuth, yani, or hadith which is known as shadh, is where a trustworthy narrator goes against somebody who's more trustworthy than him. But if a weak narrator goes against somebody more trustworthy than him, then that's got another name. Anyone know? What it's called? Munkar, Hassan. It's called munkar. But we don't need to go into that right now. Some ulama have used munkar for both, but at the moment they differentiate between the two. So in that scenario, that scenario, the one who, because they're contradicting, either this happened or that happened, right? Obviously you got to look into it. It's not simple. Maybe both took place and they looked at it from different times or whatever. But generally, if they contradict, right, then the one who is less trustworthy, his hadith is not accepted, and it's known as shadh. It is known as shadh, and shadh is the type of weak hadith. Okay, And does that affect the person's trustworthiness? It could do. And let's say every time he's narrating, he's always going against, I'm narrating and I'm always going against Sheikh Fawzan, I'm going against Sheikh Ibn Uthaymeen, and I'm going against Ibn Baz, I'm going against Albani, right? Eventually, that's kind of effect on this person. They're going to say, hang on a minute, he's not trustworthy. No. If the trustworthy narrator is old but the other one is young, and it is known that old people can affect their memory because the old age, this will come. Not necessarily. Just because somebody's old doesn't mean khalas, their memory is not there anymore. How many ulama do you know who are old but their memory, they are so sharp? Subhanallah. So it's not a condition old or young, unless it's known that because of his old age, he could be making mistakes, or if he's really, really old. It's looked into. You can't just give a general thing and say that he's old. It's got to be looked into a bit more. Hamza, very good. Your question that you asked, right? And this is an answer I'm going to give is a general answer for so many ishkalat, so many problems when it comes to hadith. How do you know if this took place? How do you know if this happened? How do you know what is correct? Right? How do you know what is correct? There's one answer. There's one way, one main one. It's known as Jam'u at-turuq. Jam'u at-turuqi. Sorry, I know it's with Ben, but no. Jam' at-turuq means you gather all of the turuq, and all of the paths, i.e., all the different chains of narration. All the chains of narration. So don't just think sometimes, obviously we're very, low, shallow in our knowledge. But don't think one hadith has just got, one chain or something like that. You look at all of them. You look at the main books of hadith that you know, and you look at so many other books of hadith that you probably don't even know of, nor do I. And, you look at everything, what the other narrators saying, what are they saying, and any words here. Sometimes two narrations have, exact same wording apart from one, and that one word shows you. So whatever issue there is, that's what the ulama go to. You do jam'u at-turuq. That's the main thing that you do. You gather all of different chains of narration, all of them together, you read all of them, and then you get a picture from it. And there's so many issues. Sometimes sometimes the narrator would say, a man came to the Prophet. Who was this man? Who was he? Right. Jam'u at-turuq. Maybe in the narration they mentioned who that man was. Right. Ja'a rajul is called mubham. Mubham is where you mention. You just mentioned somebody generally ambiguous, a man, a Bedouin, a woman. And there's another type of hadith called muhmal. Muhmal is where you mention a name, but it could be many people. Sufyan, narrated by Sufyan ibn Uyayna or Sufyan al-Thawri. That's called muhmal. Mubham and muhmal. Now that's extra because I know some people enjoy hadith over here. Right. So we've taken 4 of the conditions so far. Complete chain of narration. The narrator has to be trustworthy, and that includes 2 things, taqwa and muru'ah. The third is perfect memory, and that could be either from their chest, i.e. memory, or from a book. And the fourth is that there's no contradictions, and we've understood what we mean by contradictions. The fifth is no hidden defects. This is illah, adam al-illah. Now al-illah, hidden defects, right? The plural is ilal. They call it the science of ilal. This is a science within the science of hadith. And this is a science of hadith where not every single scholar of hadith is even a specialist in. Only the kibar, only the major scholars from the scholars of hadith specialize in ilal, like the likes of Imam Ahmad and Ali ibn Madini and others. Ilal is looking at hidden defects, i.e. hidden issues within the chain. And outwardly when you look at it, and that's why sometimes they say illah khafiyya. Khafiyya literally means hidden. Okay. You might add that word as well. But what it means is that you look at the chain, outwardly it looks completely fine. It's completely fine. The whole chain is complete. Every single person is there. The Prophet is there, Sahabi is there, the Tabi'i is there, Tabi'i is there, the Muhaddith is there, everyone's there, everyone's trustworthy. Right? It all looks fine. No one's contradicting anything. Right? It's all fine. But then there's a hidden defect, something which will cause us to, look at the hadith and say, hang on a minute, that's not right. For example, let's say this muhaddith, he narrates from this tabi'i, tabi'i who narrates from this tabi'i. But this tabi'i, he's from, let's say, Mecca. It's just a random example I'm giving, right? He's from Mecca, for example. He's never traveled outside of Mecca. And this person's from, I don't know, Egypt, right? And he's never gone to Mecca. He's never gone for Umrah. So now we're going to scratch our head. Hang on a minute. They're both trustworthy, so it looks like it's complete. But there's no WhatsApp back in the day. He's never left Mecca, and he's never left Egypt. How did they meet? How did they narrate the hadith? Now, they're both trustworthy, but maybe there was a person in the middle who's missing. Maybe there's a person who's missing. That happens, right? But maybe this person didn't mention who it is. But because there's somebody missing, that shows that there's a hidden defect. That condition is not there. Yeah, this is an example of a hidden defect. Maybe you say, okay, how about right this narrator from this narrator? However, he passed away year 100, and he was born year 99. Does that mean he must have heard a hadith when he was 1? How does that make sense? They look at things like this. They're both trustworthy and everything. And these are just different examples of ilal. It could be any sort of hidden defect. So these are the 5 conditions of an authentic hadith. These are the 5 conditions of an authentic hadith. Now, is that understood? Everyone okay? Is that clear to everyone, yeah? For those who have studied the mustalah before, I can tell that you studied if using terminologies like mardud or mu'ana'ana. But right now, let's focus on what we're on, okay? Inshallah. Now, okay. That is an authentic hadith. Now we come to Hassan hadith. What's a Hassan hadith? A Hassan hadith is the exact same as authentic hadith, far from one difference, which is the complete chain. Yes, right? The complete chain. Yes. They have to be trustworthy. Yes. Complete perfect memory. This is where they differ. So instead, for Hassan hadith, they don't have to have complete perfect memory, but rather they have to have good memory. They have to have good memory. So the memory is still good, and it's not like they're making they're not making 5,000 hadith. Let's use that same example. They're not making hundreds of mistakes, but it's not as precise as somebody who is in the category of Sahih. Let's say instead of 5, he's making 10 or 15, maybe even 20. I don't know. Just give me random numbers. Now, obviously, compared to 5,000, that's a very, very small percentage. That's still good memory enough. I mean, if I had memory like that, alhamdulillah, I'd be happy. But it's not on the level of Sahih. It's not on the level of Sahih. So that is the difference between the two. And as for the contradictions, no contradictions, same condition. And as for no hidden defect, same condition. So there's only one difference. And what is that difference? The difference is they have to have good memory instead of perfect memory. Okay? And in Arabic, they call good memory خفة الضبط. خفة يعني from خفيف. Little now. No. Yeah, ask. No. Right, well, now we come to a da'if hadith. What is a da'if hadith? A da'if hadith is Hassan bang in the middle. I'll get to that in a second. I've written some stuff, don't worry. What is a da'if hadith? A da'if hadith is any hadith which is not fulfill the conditions of the accepted hadith, which is either these 5 or of Hassan. Yani, if the whole chain is not complete, if there's something missing in the chain, then it is da'if. If somebody is not trustworthy, it is da'if. If somebody has weak memory, then it is da'if. If there's contradiction, then it is da'if. If there are hidden defects, it is da'if. So a da'if hadith is that hadith which does not consist of any of the sifat, the characteristics, or the conditions, or the conditions of Sahih or Hassan. Sahih or Hassan. So this is in regards to these 3 types of hadith. The Salaf would call Hassan and Sahih, both of these they would call it maqbul. Maqbul means accepted. And da'if, they used to call it mardud, right? Because really before Imam at-Tirmidhi, no one, the word Hassan wasn't used. So they had hadith into 2 types. They had hadith into 2 types. Maqbul, that which is accepted, and mardud, that which is rejected. But inshallah, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about this later, inshallah. What if 2 conditions are missing? If 2 conditions are missing, then it's even weaker. It's very weak. Huh? Or these different types of, any of these conditions are not there, it's a weak hadith. Now, obviously, depending on the condition, there's different types of weak hadith. So if somebody's got weak memory, that's not really, that's very little type of weak hadith. But if there's a person that is a consistent liar or something, that's a very weak hadith. We'll get to in a second. We're going to get to them in a second. Does fabricated hadith come under da'if, or is it a different level? We're going to put it under da'if, but some ulama don't even put it under da'if. Why? Because fabricated is not even a hadith. It's not a hadith. Why put it under da'if? Da'if means it's a weak hadith. It's a hadith, but there's some weakness to it. Fabricated is a complete lie. The person never said it 100% whatsoever. That's not a hadith. So some ulama say that's his own thing. But we're going to add it into da'if, and we're going to say that's the worst type. Okay, just so that we stick to these three types. Now, depending on which condition is not fulfilled, then the ulama give different names to that hadith. Don't worry about it. We're going to read it. We're going to come. Don't worry. We're going to read it. I've written quite a bit, inshallah, which will benefit you, inshallah. Right. If you've understood these 3 types of hadith, I said to you, didn't I say to you that generally, if authentic ahadith are generally a hadith from the angle of its authenticity is split into 3 types. ليس كذلك؟ بلى. But when you look into a bit more detail, it's actually split into 5. It's actually split into 5 types of hadith, and it's not complicated at all. It's split into the exact same. Look, I started with 3 because it's split into Sahih, and it's split into Hassan, and it's split into Da'if, right? Which is fine. However, Sahih gets split into 2, and Hassan gets split into 2 more. So in total we have 5. So in total we have 5. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and Da'if is 5. Okay. Sahih is split into 2. It's called Sahih li-dhatihi, Sahih by itself, and Sahih li-ghayrihi, by others. Li-ghayrihi. Sahih by itself and Sahih by others. And likewise, Hassan is split into the exact same way. Hassan li-dhatihi, by itself, and Hassan li-ghayrihi, Hassan by others. So we have Sahih by itself, Sahih by others. Hassan by itself, Hassan by others, and then we have Da'if. We don't need to worry about Da'if right now. What is Sahih li-dhatihi and all of these? Right. Sahih li-dhatihi is the Sahih hadith that we talked about previously. That Sahih hadith that fulfills the 5 conditions, that's Sahih لذاته. Right, you all know that. Hasan لذاته, Hasan by itself is that Hasan that we just explained, which is the exact same as Sahih, apart from the third condition, that the memory is good memory and not perfect memory. I think we're all good here. Sahih by itself is the Sahih hadith that we talked about. Hasan by itself is the Hasan hadith that we talked about. But what is this Hasan by others or Sahih by others? Sahih by others is basically a Hasan hadith that becomes strengthened due to other narrations. It's a Hasan hadith, but it becomes strengthened due to other narrations. I'll give an example. We have a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and this hadith, the ulama have said that it is Hasan. This chain, this hadith is Hasan. But however, there's another 2-3 hadith, for example, with different chains, and the wording is the same, or the wording is very, very similar. That indicates to us that this hadith is correct. It's a completely different chain. These people never met these people, or whatever the case may be. And because Hasan hadith is just somebody who's got weak memory. So if it shows that, okay, there's other narrations, and those other narrations can be authentic, they can be Hasan as well. But the fact that we have, let's say we have 5 narrations all saying the exact same thing, that indicates to us that this narration is Sahih. So what happens? This hadith, which is originally Hasan, because of the other narration, it becomes stronger and it reaches the level of Sahih. It reaches the level of Sahih. Think of it like you're on the street by yourself. You might be a strong man, but you're vulnerable if you're by yourself. But if you're walking down with the man, then right, that makes you guys stronger, doesn't it? Same thing here. Same thing here. Mandem. Yeah, Hamza, I don't know what that means as well. I've just heard it. You never heard me say, yeah, I don't think I use it really, but if it makes you understand, why not? Okay. Against Muru. Now, so that is Hasan by others, Sahih by others. Sahih by others, the hadith itself is Hasan, but it becomes Sahih due to other narrations. Right? What about Hasan لغيره, Hasan by others? Exact same. It's a da'if hadith that due to other narrations becomes stronger and it becomes Hasan. And it becomes Hasan. Can multiple da'if hadith strengthen a Hasan? It depends. Wallah, it depends. Wallah alam. It would depend on exactly what the hadith is and so on. And how many narrations it is and so on. But yes, Hasan by others is a da'if hadith which due to a number of narrations, other supporting narrations, it becomes stronger and becomes Hasan. Now obviously, when we say da'if here, it can't be something which is really, really weak. Right? It can't be fabricated or where there's a liar. Oh, it's a weak hadith which only has a little bit of weakness in it. Okay? Now. Sometimes what happens is you might hear ulama when they give a ruling on a hadith, they'll say the hadith is authentic, but the chain of narration is weak. Meaning this particular chain of narration has a liar in it. So this particular chain of narration is weak. However, the hadith is authentic because we have so many other different authentic narrations that prove this point. Now. Right. Don't worry, a lot of the questions you're asking, they're going to come. All right. So if we've all understood now the different types of hadith. Now let's read what I've written here regarding Sahih Hadith. Sahih Hadith, first we're going to start off with the definition of Sahih. So obviously I've explained it to you so that you understand what it is, but now I will get a bit more technical with it, written and so on. The first is definition. What is a authentic hadith? When scholars define an authentic hadith, their definition is basically a sentence with all the conditions within it. For example, Ibn Salah defined Sahih to be, and Sahih hadith to be a hadith which has a fully connected chain via the transmission of a trustworthy and completely precise narrator. Two characteristics: is trustworthy and is precise. Upon a trustworthy and completely precise narrator until the end, i.e. every single level, without contradictions and hidden defects. Okay, and that I think you guys understand. The ruling of Sahih Hadith is that there is consensus, the consensus of the ulama of Hadith, that authentic ahadith are a proof, and that it is obligatory to act upon them. That they are a proof, and it's obligatory to act upon them. Meaning nobody can just reject that hadith. Okay. Obviously, if there's like other authentic hadith opposing it and so on, then you look into it. That's when we go to usul al-fiqh. But the asl is that you have to act upon it. Now, the benefit of knowing which hadith is authentic. There are a number of benefits of knowing which hadith is authentic or not. Firstly, so that it can be used as a proof, which is what we talked about basically from the ruling. So you know which hadith is a proof and which hadith you have to act upon. And secondly, which you could argue is a branch of the first, is that if a hadith is authentically attributed to the Prophet ﷺ, then there is no excuse for a person to leave of that hadith, no matter who he is. And there's no excuse for a person to leave of that hadith, no matter whoever he is. Rather, it's obligatory to act upon it and to submit. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in an ayah which you mentioned previously, in Surah An-Nisa, ayah number 65, فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. And they, by your law, they will not believe حَتَّى يُحَكِّمُوكَ فِي مَا شَجَرَ بَيْنَهُمْ, until they go to you for rulings in regards to that which has what they have differed between themselves upon. ثُمَّ لَا يَجِدُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَرَجًا, and then they do not find any issue and difficulty in accepting that ruling. وَيُسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا, and they completely submit to that ruling. And Shaykh Islam rahimahullah, he says, if it was allowed for a person to go against authentic narrations, then the religion would have been changed. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dispraised the Christians of doing, that the priests and monks, they used to change the religion and the rulings that would have come with it. And the third is that if an authentic hadith is seemingly contradicting another authentic hadith, then we have to look into the situation. We have to look into the situation. And here, I'll teach you guys a bit of usul al-fiqh. It's very important. So make sure you pay attention to this. What do you do if there is contradiction? Now, I'm going to give you a general, right? I'm going to give you a general steps of what you have to do. The first step is, if two, firstly, before the steps, it's important to know that there's no contradictions in the religion. There's no contradictions in the religion whatsoever. And anything which seems like a contradiction, that is due to a deficiency in our knowledge. Okay, but in reality, there is no contradiction. Maybe we don't understand that this was said at a certain time, or this was said in a certain scenario, whatever the case may be, but there's no contradiction. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. Do they not ponder over the Quran? If it was from other than Allah, لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. They would have found many contradictions within it. But it is from Allah, so there is no contradictions in it. But if you have two contradictory or seemingly contradictory texts, right? What do we do? The first is that you try to combine between the two. You try to combine between the two. Meaning, and this can be done in a number of ways. So to a hadith, you say, right, this hadith refers to this particular situation, whereas this hadith is referring to this situation, or this hadith is general and that's for the specific situation, or whatever the case may be, you combine between the two ahadith. And that's the first step that you do. Why? Because that way you are acting upon both ahadith. That way you are acting upon both ahadith. You're acting upon the whole sunnah basically. That's the first thing that you do. You combine and reconcile between the two ahadith if possible. If you cannot do that, then you go to step number 2, which is if you know the tariq, if you know the dates and the history, it doesn't have to be the exact date, but if you know which hadith came first and which hadith came second, then you go to abrogation. Abrogation and nasakh. And nasakh means that the latter hadith, that ruling basically overtakes the first one, meaning you don't act upon the first one anymore, you just act upon the second one. So for example, in the beginning of Islam, alcohol was allowed to drink, and then it was only not allowed to pray salah while intoxicated, and then it was made haram. Which one do we act upon? The last one. It's abrogated the previous ones, so we act upon the fact that alcohol is haram because it is abrogated. Even the Prophet ﷺ, he sometimes he would say himself, he would say, "Kuntu nahaytukum an ziyarat al-qubur." I used to forbid you from visiting the graves. فَزُورُوهَا فَإِنَّهَا تُذَكِّرُكُمُ الْآخِرَةِ. But go and visit it now because it reminds you of the akhirah. So the Prophet said, I used to forbid you. It was haram, it wasn't allowed. Due to fear of shirk and so on, whatever the case may be. Now that I know that your iman is stronger and these characteristics of jahiliyyah are no longer there, right? Go to the grave because it reminds you of the akhirah. That's nasakh. That's a form of nasakh. The Prophet he's using basically nasakh, abrogation. So if you know the dates and the history of when the two hadiths were said, then you go to abrogation. And there's many different ways of working that out. Sometimes it's mentioned in the hadith. The Prophet said this 3 days before he passed away, 5 days before he passed away. Maybe one narrator, he was somebody who accepted Islam in Mecca and he passed away in Mecca. He narrated one hadith, and the other hadith was narrated by a companion who accepted Islam in the last year before the Prophet passed away. Then in that case, without a doubt, the one who narrated it, who accepted Islam later, his was said after, because that first person passed away whilst in Mecca. So there's different ways of working out. So if you know the tariq, if you know the history, then you go to nasakh and abrogation. If you do not know the history, and so you can't do nasakh, you come to the third, which is known as tarjih. Tarjih means to give preference to one proof over the other. To give preference to one proof over the other. So you have these two, and you basically, now, because you can't act upon both, you have to act upon one of them. And this is where you look at many different things. Okay, you look at maybe one is corresponding with the general principles of the religion. Maybe one hadith is authentic and the other hadith is weak, so you give preference to that which is authentic. And there's different ways. There's some a bit more technical ones as well. One is affirming something, the other is negating. If somebody affirms something and the other is negating, the ulama give that which is being affirmed precedence, because fihi ziyadatu ilm, there's more knowledge. And if somebody says this did not happen and the other narrator is saying this did happen and they're both trustworthy and everything, the ulama give preference to the one who said it did happen. Why? Because maybe the other person didn't see it, right? Maybe the other person did not see it, and that person just he saw it, for example. We have the famous incident of Maymuna radiallahu anha, okay, where the issue is, did Maymuna radiallahu anha marry the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam while he was in his ihram? Ibn Abbas says yes. However, in this issue, we say the correct opinion is that no, the Prophet did not marry Maymuna radiallahu anha whilst he was in the state of ihram. What's the proof? Firstly, Maymuna radiallahu anha, she herself narrated it, saying that the Prophet married me when he was halal, not in the state of ihram. Ihram, when you go for umrah, and you wear the white stuff and everything, it's called a state. It's not just a clothing, it's a state. You're not allowed to marry in that state. So the preference is given to her narration over Ibn Abbas. Why? Because it's her story. It's her marriage. She would know more about her marriage. Also, they add Ibn Abbas is very young at that time. Person passed away, but Ibn Abbas is only 13 years old, for example. So issues of marriage, as a young boy, maybe he didn't understand it as much as somebody old in age. And there's also a supporting narration. I'm forgetting the name right now, but there was a person who was the intermediate between Maymuna radiallahu anha and the Prophet ﷺ. He even says that he was not in the state of ihram. So for that reason, you know, the statement of Maymuna radiallahu anha is given precedence. So we do tarjih to the narration of Maymuna radiallahu anha over the narration of Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma. Right? Do you understand how this works now? It's not as simple as this person went against the hadith. It's so important that as a beginner not to get excited and say this person goes against hadith or this person. There's a lot more to it. It's not just 1 + 2 = 3 or whatever it is, right? There's steps that need to be taken. It has to be looked into. The ulama are not taking a certain opinion because they felt like it. If you look at how sincere they were, their ibad and everything, we're nothing compared to them. And sometimes we have the audacity to speak about them and say, speak about them in a bad light. Or a youngster has the audacity to say, in this issue, the correct opinion. Who are you to say correct opinion? Who are you? You can't probably recite the Quran properly. You can't probably translate an ayah. You've never studied usul al-fiqh. You don't know any of the principles of hadith. And you have the audacity to come around and say, well, the strongest opinion in this. Who are you to have? You don't even have an opinion. Like, you're not on that level to have an opinion. There's a line of poetry I'm forgetting. Sheikh Ishaqi told me. I cracked it when he told me. Something along the lines of, person he says, indi, according to me. وَمَنْ لَكَ أَن تَكُونَ لَكَ عِنْد. And who are you to even have the word ind, according to? Right? So it's very important is that as beginners, don't focus on correct opinion. You focus on studying. You focus on just follow your teacher for now in terms of learning. Obviously, that doesn't mean that you do blind following. Obviously, you follow that which is clear. But many masail, especially the fiqhi masail, we need to calm down a little bit and understand and have intellectual humility and realize that we don't know anything. Bakr Abu Zayd rahimahullah in Hilyat Talib al-Ilm, what does he say? He says that a student of knowledge, he goes through 3 levels. The first level, he learns a little bit and he thinks he knows everything. And then he moves to the second level where he's learning and he realizes, hang on a minute, I don't know. I don't know everything. But he still thinks, okay, I know a decent amount, but I don't know everything. And then he gets to the third level when he realizes, I don't know anything. He comes to the third level and he realizes he doesn't know anything. ما بذا حمزة نعم ما بذا يقولون هذا جائز عندنا ومن لك حتى تكون لكم عنده. Yeah, I think that's what it is. The Ibn Daqiq al-Eid say أحسنت يا حمزة أحسنت. إذا ما به نعم. They say هذا جائز, this is permissible عندنا, according to us. ومن لك, and who are you حتى تكون لكم عنده? Who are you to even have the word عند? Say according to us. Now, right, so these are the 3 stages. So we said what did we say? We said al-jam', you combine and reconcile because you're acting upon both. Then you go to nasakh, abrogation, if you know the history, the dates. If you don't know, then you go to tarjih. And then if you can't do the third, like you can't say which is stronger, you go to the fourth, at-tawaqquf. At-tawaqquf. You stop. Then you say, Wallahu a'lam. That's half of knowledge. Because either you know or you don't know. If you don't know, you say, Wallahu a'lam. Person went to Imam Malik, traveled all the way from Spain, from Andalus, asked him 40 questions. Imam Malik only answered 6, and to the remaining 34 he said, I don't know. He said, Imam Malik, even the questioner said to him, you're the Imam of Medina, Darul Hijrah, what am I going to say to my people? Basically said to them, listen, get back on your mount, get back on your donkey, your camel, right? And go back and tell you people that I don't know, that Imam Malik said he doesn't know. If people like Imam Malik can say we don't know. The Malaika, when they were asked about Allah, they said, when they asked about Allah, about the names, they said, Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana. Oh Allah, we have no knowledge except that which you have taught us. When the Prophet was asked by Jibreel alayhi salam in Hadith Jibreel, when is the day of judgment? وَالْمَسْئُولُ عَنْهَا بِأَعْلَمُ مِنَ السَّائِلِ. The one who is being asked doesn't know more than the one who is asking. When Umar radiallahu anhu is asked, do you know who this person is? Allah wa Rasuluhu a'lam. Allah and His Messenger know best. Right? So we need to realize our status in knowledge and stick to that which we know, and not to delve into falsafa and get excited and speak without knowledge. Masalih ilm rijal hum as a person. Naam, sahih. I remember when I was in class, I'm studying Mustalah for the first time. I came out depressed. They're not literally depressed, but I came out thinking my hadith will never get accepted. It really puts down a person, and they realize we're nothing compared to the ulama. Right, the levels of authentic ahadith. Right, I really want to finish this whole section on ahadith pertaining to the authenticity. It's quite a lot. Right, okay, we will let's see what we can do, inshallah. Questions, try to keep them to the end, otherwise you guys distract me. Keep the questions till the end, inshallah. Right, levels of authentic ahadith. Now, ahadith are not of the same level, right? So we have different levels of hadith. Some ahadith are more authentic than others. Some ahadith are more authentic than others. Let's say, for example, you see me to be trustworthy. But خلاص, I'm not going to be as trustworthy as Shaykh Haytham Farhan, Shaykh Ishaqi, or Shaykh Qasim, right? So there's different levels. Even of hadith, there are different levels of authentic hadith. So Ibn Salah mentions this, Al-Iraqi mentions it, that there are different levels to the authentic hadith. And why? Because of the conditions. It goes back to the conditions. Some narrators will be even stronger in the conditions. Some of their memory, they'll all be precise, but some will be a lot more higher than others, and so on. Now, so the levels of authentic hadith are 7. The first level is that hadith which has been narrated by Bukhari and Muslim. The most authentic hadith that you can get, generally, we're saying generally, I'm going to get to that point in a second, is that hadith which is narrated by Bukhari and Muslim. It is narrated by Bukhari and Muslim. And this is what is referred to as muttafaqun alayh, agreed upon. So if you ever see a hadith, after the hadith it says agreed upon, agreed by Bukhari and Muslim, narrated by Bukhari and Muslim. That's the most authentic hadith that you can get. The second is that which has been narrated by only Imam al-Bukhari. Is that which has been narrated only by Imam al-Bukhari. The third is that which has been narrated only by Imam Muslim. Is that which has been narrated only by Imam Muslim. The fourth is that which has been narrated upon the conditions of Bukhari and Muslim. Is that which has been narrated upon the conditions of Bukhari and Muslim, but they did not narrate it. And it's following their same condition, but they did not narrate it. So the fourth is that which has been narrated upon the conditions of Bukhari and Muslim, and they did not narrate it. Then the fifth is that which has been narrated upon only the conditions of Bukhari, is that which has been narrated only upon the conditions of Bukhari, and he didn't narrate it. The sixth is that which has been narrated only upon the conditions of Imam Muslim, and he did not narrate it. And the seventh is that which has been narrated upon the conditions of other than them. And other ulama have considered it to be authentic, but they're not necessarily following the conditions of Bukhari and Muslim. Now, somebody may ask what are the conditions of Bukhari and Muslim. We're not going to go into that right now. I mentioned them in the other series I told you about, understanding hadith, which I did in Ross Street. In there I went into a lot more detail, so you can listen to that inshallah. But with the 5 conditions that we mentioned, they added a few more conditions because they were even more stricter. That's why there's no doubt in the hadith, right? The other ulama, if those 5 conditions are met, خلاص, it's sahih. There were a few differences. For example, Bukhari's Imam Muslim, he just needed to know that could 2 narrators, would it have been possible that they could meet? They both were in the same time, the same place, and they're both trustworthy. Khalas, he accepted that hadith. It makes sense, right? If it's trustworthy, and we've looked at their lives, they're both in Makkah in the same year, they're both here at the same time, we accept that hadith. But Bukhari was like, no. We have to know that they actually met. You have to have proof that they actually met. So he went like a step higher. Things like that. Now, so the first is agreed upon by Bukhari and Muslim, that only Bukhari, only Muslim, upon the conditions of Bukhari and Muslim, but they did not narrate it, upon the conditions of Bukhari, upon the conditions of Muslim, and then the conditions of others. And others have narrated it, and they have considered it to be authentic. Now we said generally because there may be a hadith in Muslim or in Bukhari, and there's another hadith in Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, which could be more authentic than that which is in Bukhari. That one chain of narration could be more authentic. That doesn't belittle the hadith in Bukhari or Muslim, they're still authentic. The hadith could work out to be more authentic. Okay? Because they're not only trustworthy narrators, but the Imams, like Imam Malik, Imam Nafi', Ibn Umar, for example. We're going to talk about some of the most authentic asanid as well. That's what we said generally. We've got a doubt here. You don't understand number 7 well? Number 7 is basically saying to you that it's a hadith narrated not by Bukhari or Muslim. It's not following their conditions because they added more conditions. It's just another scholar, he said it's authentic. It's another scholar who said it is authentic. So it's still authentic, but it's not the same level as Bukhari or Muslim. Does that make sense? It is found in other books of hadith. No, other books of hadith, no. Obviously, it wouldn't be found in Bukhari or Muslim, otherwise it would be Bukhari or Muslim, right? Right. It's a doubt here. Or Imam al-Shafi'i, rahimahullah. Imam al-Shafi'i said, there is no book after the book of Allah more authentic than the book of Imam Malik. Didn't we just say Bukhari and Muslim are the most authentic books? How can Imam Shafi'i say that the most authentic book is the Muwatta of Imam Malik? Let me just add the reference to that one. What do you guys think? One second. Let me just add the reference. I'm going to come back to this in a second because I'm going to forget later. If I go to the no. I didn't reference in that one. Right. Now, most of you have got the answer, which is that according to the time of Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah, Imam Bukhari Muslim came after Imam Shafi'i. There was no such thing as Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim at the time of Bukhari, at the time of Imam Shafi'i. Imam Shafi'i passed away 204 after Hijrah. He was born 150 and he passed away 204 after Hijrah. Whereas Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah, he was born, I think 194. No, maybe 194. You might need to double check that. The point being is, there was no such thing as Sahih Bukhari at that time. Okay, who is the first one to compile a book of authentic hadith? The answer is the first one to compile a book of authentic hadith is Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah. Is Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah, Sahih Bukhari. Now, some have said that the first one to do it was Imam Malik. Okay, and we say, look, there's no contradiction between the two. Why? Because it depends on the intention. If you mean a book which contains authentic hadith, then yes, the Muwatta Imam Malik had many authentic hadith. But if you mean a whole book with the intent that every single hadith there is only sahih and only authentic, then Imam Bukhari was the first one to write that book. So a book to have authentic hadith, yeah, Muwatta Imam Malik, that's fine. But and before Imam Malik, they weren't really books. They were more small suhuf, scrolls, parchments, small rasail, if anything. He was like the first one to write a proper book. So in there are authentic hadith. But when we mean to compile a book, a complete book with just authentic hadith, then it is Imam al-Bukhari. Right. Most authentic hadith chains. Now there are some chains which are the most authentic chains, but let's read what it says here. Ahmad Shakir said in his footnotes of Alfiyah as-Suyuti, which is this book over here, Alfiyah to as-Suyuti, and Ahmad Shakir has a few footnotes. So as you can see, he has, footnotes. It's not like an in-depth explanation, but he has footnotes upon it. And that reminds me, by the way, I did find the hadith, the Sharaf al Hadith. I did find it. I think the title which everyone else mentioned was this one, Sharaf al Hadith, the eminence of hadith adherents. But this is about Dar al-Arqam, and I don't know who they are now. I have shakli now. But I found another one that I have, which is Disciples of Hadith, the Noble Guardians, which is Sharaf al Hadith. Now, this is about Dar al-Sunnah. And Dar al-Sunnah are good. A lot of the times we did books with Shaykh Abdul Hamid al-Hasari, Hafidhullah, we used Dar al-Sunnah. Very, very good brothers. Alhamdulillah. Now, anyways, Ahmad Shakir, he says in his footnotes of Alfiyat al-Suyuti, the outcome of in-depth research shows that one should not rule that a certain chain is the most authentic unrestrictedly. Rather, it should be restricted by the name of a companion or country. He is saying basically that, look, we can't say that this is the most authentic chain. Why? Because there's so many things that you have to look at. It's not just the people in the chain. You have to look at when it was said, why it was said, that particular narration itself. There's so many other things that you have to look at. So to say unrestrictedly that this is the most authentic, then that is very difficult to say. Rather, he says what is best to say is, this is the most authentic chain in this country, or this is the most authentic chain going back to Abu Hurairah, or going back to Ibn Umar, or anything like that. And that's what I've tried to do. I've tried to mention different companions and their most authentic chains that go to them. I started off with what is the most famous one, and what Imam al-Bukhari actually considered to be as-silsilah al-dhahabiyah. As-silsilah al-dhahabiyah. As-silsilah al-dhahabiyah means golden chain. Right? Silsilatu al-dhahabiyah, the golden chain. And this is when a chain is narrated by Imam Malik upon his teacher Nafi', who was the freed slave of Ibn Umar, and he was a scholar, upon Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu. And look how short that was. That means between Imam Malik and the Prophet ﷺ, only two people, Nafi' and Ibn Umar as well. It's very short as well. There's another one by Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, great Imam. He would narrate upon Salim ibn Abdullah ibn Umar, who is the son of Ibn Umar, who would narrate upon Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu. And sometimes Ibn Umar would narrate upon his father, Umar. Also, we have Muhammad ibn Sirin, who would narrate upon Ubaidah al-Salmani, who would narrate upon Ali ibn Talib radiallahu anhu. We have Ibrahim al-Nakha'i. Ibrahim al-Nakha'i is a very, very important name. When you think Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, think of Kufa, think of Iraq, and think of Ibn Mas'ud. Whenever he would say Kanu, they used to do, he's always referring to the students of Ibn Mas'ud. Okay. Anyways, he narrates upon Alqamah. Alqamah, again, one of the main students of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. He narrates upon Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu. We have Zuhri, again, who narrates upon Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, who narrates upon Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. And if I just remember something, I think Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib might have married the daughter of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. I'll have to double check that, but I think I remember some of my teachers mentioning that, and that's why Sa'id ibn Musayyib, I think Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah, he would accept the marasil of Sa'id ibn Musayyib. Marasil meaning when Sa'id ibn Musayyib would say that the Prophet said, he would accept it because he said, look, he's a son-in-law of Abu Hurairah, most likely he would have heard it from Abu Hurairah. Now, ala kulli hal, these are some of the most authentic chains of narration. where to find authentic hadith. Where can we find authentic hadith? The first two places you know is Bukhari and Muslim. However, we know that in Bukhari and Muslim, they did not have every single authentic hadith. There are many authentic ahadith which aren't in Bukhari and Muslim. Hence they said that, let's read what it says. But authentic ahadith are not restricted to these two books. Rather, there are many other authentic ahadith in other books. Imam Bukhari said, I have not entered in my book Al-Jami' and Sahih Bukhari, except that which is authentic, and I have left out other authentic ahadith to not make it lengthy. Imam Muslim said, I have not placed here every authentic hadith I know. That's something very important to know with a sheikh. You know, sometimes a teacher saying something and the student thinks he missed this out, Or sometimes the opposite, the sheikh mentions something and the student thinks, oh, I've learned this in depth. No, relax. The sheikh doesn't mention everything that he knows. You know, even me in my lesson, so many times I prepare and I read. In the lesson, I only mention half of it. I don't mention all of it because of time or because I don't think it's on relevant or whatever the case may be. But anyways, and obviously if that's me, a student of knowledge, then what about a scholar? Some of the other books. Now, these other books, we're going to study them. What are they and everything? But just write the names for them down at the moment. The first is known as Sahih Ibn Khuzaymah. Sahih Ibn Khuzaymah. Next is known as Sahih Ibn Hibban. And the third is known as Mustadrak Al-Hakim by Imam Al-Hakim. Okay. Now Mustadrak is a different word. What does that mean? We'll get to it, inshallah. We'll get to it. But many authentic hadith are in here, but they are not on the level of Bukhari and Muslim. Meaning not every single hadith is authentic. In that we will study these books in a bit of depth shortly, inshallah. Right, now we've come to Hassan Hadith. How much? That will take. Okay, what we'll do is we'll stop here today, inshallah. And we'll take Hassan and Da'if and the other types of hadith tomorrow. No, sorry, not tomorrow, next lesson, inshallah. So I know we took quite a bit yesterday, we took quite a bit today. Make sure you revise all of it. This is very important. You know, this introduction that you guys are getting is going to benefit you in so many different ways. Mainly two. Firstly, what you are getting are the main issues that you need, the main things that you need when it comes to hadith, without even having to study such a long book. Like, you don't have to study a whole separate book on Mustalah al-Hadith. You don't have to study a whole separate book on Hujjat al-Sunnah or on the history of hadith, as we're going to get to shortly. And the second benefit is, as you can see, there's actually a lot of fawaid in here, which it's very hard to find elsewhere. Like these chains, honestly, it took me a lot of time to look into it, research it, summarize it. Some places I found like 37 different chains, and I had to just mention 5 and choose. And, you know, alhamdulillah, you know, and I've tried my best to always add in the references where I can, and so on. So, you know, I'm not saying this, you know, boasting or anything. You know, this is nothing compared to what another alim would do. But this is just to show you guys and to make you guys appreciate, you know, these worksheets and you know how much effort I'm trying to put in as well. So likewise, I want you guys to put in the same amount of effort by revising, by memorizing, by get together with one another. How many people are in here? How many people are, you know, in this group? Message one another, revise with one another, test one another. Why not, inshallah? Now, are there any questions? Our next lesson is on Tuesday, inshallah, next Tuesday. Homework is to revise. Homework is to revise. That's it. Wallahu a'lam. Wallahu a'lam. Question pertaining to the lesson, inshallah. The print, I think for شرف أصحاب الحديث you get this one, دار السنة good. For Ahmed Shakir's footnotes Alfiyat al-Suyuti, you can get this one. Sheikh Ishaq actually has his own tahqiq of Alfiyat al-Suyuti. It came out recently. Let me have a see if I have it. I'll show you. I can't find it at the moment. Actually, no, wait, one second, is that it? نعم. This is Alfiyat al-Suyuti. It sounds like poetry. By Imam al-Suyuti. The Sheikh Muhammad Bakrim al-Ishaqi. It came out, I think, a year or two ago. Why is Bukhari more authentic than Muslim? Because his conditions were stronger. His conditions were stronger. How do you narrow it down to that specific narrator? This narrator made a mistake. A number of things. The main thing, جمع الطرق. جمع الطرق. Combining the narrations, the chains of the chains. So, for example, you find 3 chains or 4 chains, 3 of them have the same person, or something like that, and the 4th one somebody else, and that's where the mistake happened. You know that 4th person is the one who made the mistake, or something like that. Is a list of the other books in order which has the most authentic hadith? Na'am. So them 3, they're actually in order of the year, order of how they came as well. So Ibn Khuzaymah came first, Ibn Hibban came later, and Hakim came later, and he was a student and so on. Also in terms of authenticity. Who said we can't take rulings from the Da'if hadith? Next lesson, inshallah, we'll talk about it. Next lesson, inshallah. What was the first book? Sahih ibn Khuzaymah. Sahih ibn Khuzaymah. Then Sahih ibn Hibban. Then Mustadrak al-Hakim. نعم. طيب, we'll stop here بإذن الله. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. بارك الله.